The fire had burned down to a quiet, steady core when we first saw it. Embers shifted beneath a lattice of half-collapsed logs, breathing orange light into the clearing. The air smelled of sap and smoke and wet pine needles. Beyond the reach of the flames, the forest stood close and silent, rows of black trunks disappearing into a darkness that felt thicker than night should allow. We had hiked too far off the marked trail that afternoon. That much was obvious now. No signal, no path back, just a small clearing beside a creek and the stubborn warmth of our fire. Marcus poked the coals with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "They say fires keep animals away," he said. "Depends on the animal," Leah replied from across the flames. I was half listening, watching the way the firelight climbed the trunks of nearby trees and stretched our shadows across the ground. Mine bent long and thin over a patch of moss. Marcus's shadow flickered sharply whenever he moved his arm. Leah's shadow trembled behind her like a second person trying to leave. Everything behaved the way light should, until it didn't. Marcus froze first. The stick stopped moving in the fire. "Hey," he said quietly, "do we have company?" I looked up. Someone stood just beyond the firelight. A figure at the edge of the clearing, where the orange glow faded into the forest's cold blue darkness. Close enough that we could see it clearly. Far enough that the fire didn't quite reach its feet. Tall, still, watching us. I assumed it was another hiker who'd wandered too close to our campsite. "Hello," Leah called. The figure didn't answer. Marcus stood slowly. "You lost." The fire cracked loudly. A log shifted, spilling brighter light into the clearing. That was when I noticed something wrong. At first, it was subtle. The firelight struck the figure fully now. Its torso, shoulders, the outline of its head. But the ground behind it remained empty. No shadow. I blinked, assuming the angle was strange. The flames surged again, throwing our shadows wildly across the clearing. Mine stretched. Marcus's stretched. Leah's stretched. The figure's didn't. There was nothing behind it. Just forest floor. A hollow space where darkness should have bent and shifted. "Do you see that?" I whispered. Marcus didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "Yeah." Leah stood slowly. "Maybe the ground's uneven," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. The fire popped again. The figure took a step closer. Leaves barely moved beneath its foot. The sound was wrong. Too soft, like someone mimicking the idea of walking. Now the firelight reached its legs. Still no shadow. Its proportions seemed almost right, but something about them refused to settle into normal. Its arms hung slightly too long. Its head tilted a fraction too far to one side, like a photograph skewed during printing. "Hey," Marcus called cautiously. "You need help." The figure's face remained hidden in shifting light. Then it spoke. "Marcus." The voice was Marcus's voice. Perfect. Exact. Marcus flinched like he'd been slapped. Leah stared at him. "Did you just—" "I didn't say that," Marcus whispered. The figure tilted its head further. The fire shifted again. And for a split second, the outline of its body flickered, not like a person moving, but like something trying to hold the shape of one. Then it spoke again. This time the voice was Leah's. "Marcus." Leah's face drained of color. The forest around us remained completely silent. No insects, no rustling leaves. Even the creek nearby seemed quieter. Marcus stepped closer to the fire, instinctively. "Okay," he said slowly. "This is some kind of trick." "Yeah," Leah said, but she didn't sound convinced. The figure took another step. Now it stood just outside the ring of heat. The firelight washed across its chest and arms. Still no shadow. Even stranger, the ground behind it seemed slightly darker than the rest of the clearing, like the world expected a shadow there but couldn't produce one. The figure opened its mouth again. This time it spoke with my voice. "Come here." My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken. The figure extended one arm toward us. Its fingers looked almost right, but there were too many joints, bending in soft, uncertain angles. Marcus swore under his breath. Stay by the fire, he said. The flames cracked loudly. For a moment the fire surged bright enough to throw harsh light across the clearing. Every object snapped into sharp contrast. Every tree cast a long shadow, except the figure. It stood there untouched by the rule. Maybe it's just the angle, Leah said desperately. Marcus grabbed a burning stick from the fire. Let's test that. He tossed it toward the figure. The stick landed near its feet, glowing bright red. Light spilled across its legs. Behind it, nothing. No shadow. The figure looked down at the burning stick, then back at us, and smiled. Except the smile appeared half a second too late, like a delayed reflection. Leah stepped back. That's not a person. The figure spoke again. Now its voice blended ours together. Marcus's tone, Leah's pitch, my cadence, layered wrong. Come here. It took another step forward. The heat of the fire must have reached it now. But it didn't react. The flames bent and flickered strangely near its body, like air around it didn't behave correctly. Marcus grabbed my arm. If it crosses the firelight, he said quietly, we run. Where? He didn't answer. The figure raised its arm again. Then it spoke softly. Leah. This time the voice was perfect. Her sister's voice. Leah stiffened instantly. Leah, it repeated gently. Marcus and I looked at her. She whispered, That's Emily. But Emily was 3 states away. Leah, the voice said again. The figure stepped closer. Now it stood almost inside the ring of firelight. Still no shadow. The ground behind it remained impossibly empty. Leah took a step forward before either of us could stop her. Leah, Marcus snapped. But she was staring at the figure like someone recognizing a familiar face through fog. Emily? She whispered. The figure tilted its head. For a moment, the firelight struck its face clearly, and I realized something worse than the missing shadow. The features weren't wrong. They were unfinished, like a sculpture that hadn't decided what it was yet. I slightly misplaced. Skin that shifted texture when the flames moved. Spoke again. Come here. Leah moved toward it. Marcus lunged and grabbed her jacket. Don't. The figure froze. Then its outline flickered again. For a brief instant it seemed taller. Longer. Like its true shape stretched far beyond the human outline it wore. The fire suddenly flared violently. A log collapsed inward. The clearing burst with light. For one brilliant second, every shadow stretched across the forest floor. And I saw the truth. The figure had no shadow, but something behind it did. A vast shape that did not match its body. Something enormous and crooked that recoiled from the firelight. Then the flames settled. The clearing dimmed. The figure was gone. The space where it had stood felt colder. Leah collapsed beside the fire, shaking. Marcus stared into the trees. Did it leave? She whispered. I wasn't sure, because when I looked down at the ground near the edge of the clearing, there was now a new shadow among ours. Long, thin, human-shaped, and it moved slightly, even when none of us did. Their campsite was surrounded by trees carved with open eyes. At first glance, it looked like old trail art, the kind bored hikers sometimes left behind in quiet forests. Simple shapes cut into bark with a knife. Ovals, lashes, hollow pupils staring outward. But these weren't old. The edges of the carvings were pale and wet, the wood beneath still raw. Sap bled slowly down the trunks like tears, sticky and amber in the firelight. Marcus noticed them first. You guys see that? Leah and I turned from the packs we were unpacking. The clearing itself was oddly perfect. A near circle of level ground in the middle of dense woods. Fallen needles formed a soft carpet beneath our boots. The trees around it stood evenly spaced, like they had grown with deliberate care. And on nearly every trunk facing inward. And I, open, watching the center of the clearing. Okay, Leah said slowly, stepping closer to one. That's weird. Marcus crouched beside the fire pit we'd just built, striking a lighter. Somebody's idea of art project, he said. The flame caught the kindling. Fire crackled to life, pushing warm orange light against the trunks. And suddenly the carvings seemed deeper than before. Every eye stared directly toward us. Who carved them? I asked. Marcus shrugged. Probably hunters messing around. Leah ran her fingers lightly across one of the carvings. She pulled her hand back immediately. It's fresh. How fresh? Like. She rubbed the sap between her fingers, grimacing. Today fresh. The fire popped sharply. The forest beyond the clearing felt wrong. Not threatening. Just quiet. Too quiet. Even in deep woods, there are usually insects, wind, something shifting in the brush. But here the silence pressed inward from every direction. Marcus stood and turned slowly, scanning the trees. How many are there? We started counting. 1, 2, 3. Every tree facing the clearing had one. Different shapes, but all unmistakably eyes. 21 in total. Whoever carved these wanted them looking inward, Leah said. Marcus smirked uneasily. Guess we're the show. The fire burned brighter as darkness thickened beyond the trees. We cooked quietly, trying not to think about the watching shapes. At first, it was easy enough to ignore them. The flames flickered. Shadows shifted. Branches creaked faintly in the distance. But every time the firelight flared, the carved eyes seemed to move. Not physically, but subtly, as if their expressions changed with the light. At one point, Leah leaned forward suddenly. Did that blink? Marcus laughed. No, but she kept staring at one tree near the edge of the clearing. I swear the lid closed. Wood doesn't blink. Yeah, she muttered. I know. An hour passed. The fire burned steady, and something else changed. The silence deepened. Not gradually, suddenly. One moment the forest had faint sounds, distant rustling, a night bird somewhere far off. The next moment everything stopped. Even the wind. The fire popped loudly in the vacuum of sound. Marcus looked up. That's not normal. Leah nodded slowly. Animals would still be moving. The forest beyond the clearing had become a wall of stillness. Like the woods were holding their breath. Marcus stood and stretched. I'm grabbing more wood. He stepped toward the edge of the clearing. Stay inside the ring, Leah said. He stopped. What ring? She gestured vaguely. The trees. It just feels like we shouldn't go past them. Marcus rolled his eyes but stayed inside the circle, gathering fallen branches. The fire flared brighter. Light washed across the trunks again. And I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. There's another one, I said. Leah turned. Another what? We counted again. 22. A new carving had appeared on a tree that hadn't had one before. The cut looked just as fresh. Sap still bleeding. Marcus frowned. That wasn't there earlier. You're sure? Leah asked. Yes. We all stared at it. None of us had heard carving. No scraping of knife against bark. Nothing. Just silence. Marcus stepped closer to inspect it. And froze. Guys. What? He pointed. Look at the shape. The carving wasn't identical to the others. The eyelid curve was slightly different. More familiar. Leah leaned closer. Oh, it looked like her eye. Not exactly, but close enough that recognition hit instantly. Marcus laughed nervously. That's a coincidence. But none of us believed it. The fire suddenly crackled violently. A burst of sparks lifted into the air. And for a split second the shadows of the carved eyes stretched across the ground like long lashes. Then the light settled. Another tree now had a carving. 23. Marcus backed away slowly. Okay, that's new. We had all been looking at the ring. No one had approached the tree. Yet the cut was fresh. Sap dripping. The forest remained silent. Leah whispered, Something's doing it. Marcus forced a laugh. Like what? No one answered. The firelight shifted again. And I saw something that made my chest tighten. Marcus, I said quietly. Yeah. Look at that one. He turned. The carving on the nearest tree had changed. The pupil, just a hollow cut in the bark, had deepened somehow, and the eyelid angle looked annoyed. Marcus leaned closer. That's weird. Leah swallowed. It looks like you. What? The expression. Marcus stared. The eye carved into the bark now carried his exact skeptical squint. The fire crackled softly. Across the clearing, another carving shifted slightly in the light. That one mirrored Leah's wide, worried stare. My skin prickled. Don't move, I said. What? Just hold still. We did. The fire flickered. Every carved eye seemed to tilt subtly toward us. Studying. Copying. Marcus whispered. This is some Blair Witch nonsense. Leah didn't laugh. Why only the ones facing the clearing? I looked around slowly. Every tree with a carving faced inward. None faced the forest. They weren't warnings. They were observers. Marcus stood suddenly. We're leaving. Leah grabbed his arm. Now? Yes. But where? We lost the trail hours ago. Anywhere but here. He grabbed his pack. The moment he stepped toward the trees, the fire dropped. Not extinguished, just dimmed, as if something sucked the brightness away. The clearing darkened instantly. Marcus stopped. Did you see that? Then something worse happened. A faint scraping sound echoed around the circle. Not loud, just enough to hear. Knife against bark. Slow, careful. Marcus whispered. That's carving. The sound came from everywhere. Tree after tree. Invisible blades cutting into wood. New eyes opening in the trunks. We couldn't see the hands, but we heard the work. Leah covered her ears. Stop! The scraping continued. Dozens of cuts forming. The forest itself seemed to lean inward. Watching. The fire sputtered weakly, then brightened suddenly. And we saw them. Every tree now had an eye. Dozens. Hundreds. All open. All facing us. And every single one wore our expressions. Fear. Confusion. Recognition. Marcus whispered. It's learning. The scraping stopped. The forest returned to silence. Then something moved far beyond the trees. A shape shifting between trunks. Slow. Massive. Too large to belong to anything human. The carved eyes didn't turn toward it. They stayed fixed on us. Leah whispered. It's not watching through them. What? It's seeing us. The fire flickered again. And every carved eye blinked at once. Just once. Slow. Deliberate. When they opened again, they weren't copying us anymore. They were waiting. Marcus grabbed my arm. We need to run. But when we turned, the path we had entered from was gone. Only more trees. More eyes. Watching. And deeper in the forest, something began carving again. Slowly. Patiently. Making room for new ones.